it's Kelly. Thanks so much for joining me today. I have another process video, and today I am using mostly Amy Tangerine's new line, Better Together. I do not have a bunch of this collection. I found a couple of her papers at AC Moore, which is was like a bonus because they usually don't carry the single sheets of pattern paper of current collections that I'm interested in, and they had just a couple of these, and I received the rub-ons in one of my hip kits. So I decided to pull out some of these products and do a different design than I have been drawn to lately. And it just went more along with the three photos on top of one another, looking more like a photo strip. So I'm taking the papers that I think that I want to use, and I'm just cutting some random widths of paper. And my thought was to layer these pieces of paper, in a way that was pleasing to the eye with different heights, and then have my photos anchored on this. And these photos have been just, waiting for inspiration. They are, let's see, Emily was 9 years old when I took these, and she had just learned how to blow a bubble. And so I sat her on the front porch, and she practiced blowing bubbles, and I worked on my photography with my, camera. I think I was taking an online class at this time, just trying to figure out different settings on the camera. And when I was looking through the photos, I realized that I had a great series. One with her blowing just a little teeny bubble, and then the bubble getting bigger, and then when it, burst, and she's just kind of giggling because it was just so funny for her. And these pictures are just some that just pull on my heartstrings. I love them. It shows so much of her personality, and I just have sat on them waiting for, something to inspire me to use them. And these Amy Tan papers work beautifully with her shirt and the colors. So when I, was starting to play with those and pull them together, I just realized that that is exactly what I wanted to do. So you can see I am really playing around with the placement of the papers. My goal is to have them different widths and different height. And I want to overlap some of the joining edges so that there's not any weird gaps. And then I wanted to anchor the photos on that yellow branding strip. And this is pretty much the way that the layers will end up, and I just loved the way that this came out. I think sometimes doing something that's a little bit different than your normal style can be so much fun. It's easy for me just to get into a rut, and I knew that by placing the photos one on top of another, it would force me to do something a little bit different. So I am taking these beautiful teal glitter thickers. I think they are from Chamel's new line. I'm not 100% sure. They're one of my favorite fonts. It's just a very versatile font. And so what I decided is I wanted to have a pretty clean look for this. And I took out my Creative Memories circle templates. And I just drew a couple of circles on the paper to reiterate the bubble theme, and I'm just using my little paper piercer, and I have pulled out some of my embroidery floss that I have in my stash, and I'm just punching holes around the circle. And I don't make you watch all of this because that would be like trying to watch grass grow. So I just wanted you to be able to see that I'm not measuring, I'm just guesstimating, piercing it and just being done with it. I don't have to stress so much about making sure that my holes are perfectly, centered apart. So I just am doing a simple back stitch, and I don't show much of this either. I just wanted to show it in case anybody, hadn't really seen it and wanted to have some details of it. It's basically just going into the next hole and then bringing the thread back down. And so after I finished, I did one circle of pink, one of yellow, and one of teal. And I just was so happy with the way that it came out. So these rub-ons I had gotten in one of my hip kits, and so I pulled it out and I decided that I wanted to make sure that they popped off of the pattern papers. I knew that if I just rubbed them onto the pattern that they would get lost. And so they rubbed on pretty well. I've had some rub a little bit better, but for the most part, they just rubbed on right away. And then I just fussy cut around the white cardstock, leaving a small white border around the rub-on, and really like the way that that came out. It's just, a nice way of stretching your rub-ons, when you've got some, when you know where you want to put it, and you know that it'll get lost otherwise. Or it's a great way to do it if you have no idea where you want to put the rub-on. That way you can move the rub-on around the page. So it's definitely one of those things that I like doing and will probably do with some of my other rub-ons as well. So with my fussy cutting, you can see that my left hand is doing most of the work. I tend to turn the die cut, or in this case the rub-on, with my left hand and keep my scissors fairly straight. And I find that that just works well. I had these flare from my stash that I pulled because the yellows were just very pretty and they went well with the layout. And I decided I wanted to play with the title some. I cut the letters up off of on the wax paper. I placed it earlier on the wax paper as one big word, and I played around with it, trying to see if I could get it to follow the line of the bubble. And the letters, I think, are too tall and too thin, if that makes sense. If they were a little bit fatter, I think that they would have flowed around the bubble a little bit better, but it just wasn't pleasing to my eye, and I just decided that I was going to straighten out both of them and just have that be another linear aspect. So these rub-ons are from her Rise and Shine collection, and they work very well with her new collection, Better Together. So I was very happy. These I've had in my stash, and they were from another hip kit. So it was nice to be able to pull these out of my stash and use them. It's really amazing just how well these two collections work with one another. And it makes it nice so that you don't feel like you have to get the whole collection to be able to make, several pages with it. You can mix and match from, other things that you've had in your stash. So I decided I wanted to cut another flower and to have this smaller flower by my title. So in just a second, after I finish rubbing it on, you will see that I move the flower to where that yellow flare is, and I work that yellow flare into the cluster on the right side of the photos. I felt like that I needed one main cluster and two smaller clusters, and so the two smaller clusters are going to be in the upper right hand corner with that camera flare, and then by the title. So at this point, this is pretty much the way the layout is going to come together. I'm just going to start hearing things. Oh, I forgot about this. This was another rub-on that I used, and it is a speech bubble, and I don't generally do speech bubbles just because the little thing that is supposed to come from the mouth, it never orients the way that I need it to orient. So a lot of times I will hide it, and this time it actually worked exactly how I would need it to, but I couldn't figure out how I liked it up in the top. So I end up putting it in the bottom cluster, and that actually makes it much better because it really anchors that right hand cluster. So these Pink Fresh rubber charms, I'm not sure what to call them. They had one that said "This Just Happened," and it was in that really pretty bright yellow, so I thought it would be perfect to help ground the title. And I'm just borrowing this idea from Missy, using a little bit of tangled thread to add another dimension underneath the flare. And I really was happy with the way that it came out. And then I decided to repeat it with some yellow thread underneath the camera flare up top. Now this is pretty much it. I'm just going to make sure everything is adhered down onto my page. I will use some quick dry adhesive to glue down the thread and my flare. And that's pretty much it for today. So I do have some close-ups and some stills at the end where you can see the pictures in more detail. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you soon. Bye.